we're going to move into some goal-related stuff. You're going to get another one of those models, like the coaching wheel, which is an entire model of what you can do with the client from the moment they step into your room until they're done. Because it is our experience that people that are just getting into the coaching field like to leave this training with a complete session structure. So you'll be getting another one of those session structures. There's not just one type of session structure. There's several, and from them you choose your preferred. So our goal section will lead into one of those. And I'm going to start off by teaching you what is traditionally taught as the ultimate, the most powerful, the foolproof way to achieve your goals. And when I've presented to you why this is so compelling, so great, so good, so foolproof, I will then tell you why it doesn't work. All of the time. Now here's why this is good. And the main reason is because when goals are set or SMART, they become extremely compelling. They become lick your lips good and delicious, so that you know what you want and you know how you're going to go for it and you know when you're going to achieve it, and your mind, whether that's your unconscious or conscious mind or both, becomes really fixated on that. So it's a great way of shifting your attention onto what you actually want as opposed to what you don't. That's why it's good. That's why it is useful to be aware of these things. And if you're ever going to set a goal, then make sure it's a SMART goal. Okay, and this is what it is. SMART goals, S, standing for specific. Be very, very clear when you're deciding what you want, and you're talking about it, and you're making mental pictures about it. Be precise, because that sends a clear message to your unconscious mind. This is the thing to go for. If it's vague and wishy-washy, what message are you sending out there? Because that's what you're going to get back, vague and wishy-washy results. Okay? Make sure it's simple. It's not, I want a new car. It's, I want a red Ferrari T2135672.
By June.
October. Yeah. All right. So, a bullet point as opposed to a paragraph to describe that. Make sure it's measurable. Is it something, I want happiness? But what is that? Well, maybe you can measure. Maybe happiness is a very precise state that you can tune into and you know exactly what it feels like. Because then when you achieve it down the line, you know you've achieved it. Otherwise, how do you measure if you've achieved it or not? And meaningful to you. You don't decide you want this goal because your neighbor has it and therefore you should have one too. Or somebody else thinks you ought to go for that and that's why. It should be meaningful to you. Otherwise, how will it ever be compelling? And if it's not compelling, you won't be motivated to go for it. It should be achievable. Achievable and realistic really are much of the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't sort of shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, that's okay, you'll still land amongst the stars. But achievable to you, because if it's not, your unconscious mind will go, ha ha, keep dreaming. You don't have what it takes to achieve that, and it might not be your support on the way to achieving your goal. Achievable means it's not clashing with any beliefs about the possibility of achieving that goal. It means that you are congruent when you set the goal. I know I can do it. I might be stretching myself, and goals should stretch you. Stretch yourself, but you know you can, even though you don't know how yet, but you can find the resources to achieve it. Okay? Good. Goals should be timed. When do you want to achieve it? Next year? Not good enough. Next year, November the 27th at 4 p.m. That's when I want it. That sends a very clear message to your unconscious mind. Then, otherwise when? In fact, you might even just pass it by one day and not even realize that it's it. Okay? And towards motivation. The goal must be a positively stated whatever it is that you want to move towards. Everything that I've just said is valid and useful given a specific context. I honestly mean this has relevance. But I'm about to contradict everything that I've just said as well. What this also creates is attachment to something that might not necessarily be the real thing that you're aiming to achieve in your life. Now, if you're setting a SMART goal to achieve a particular emotional state, timed, well, on that day, on that time, yeah, that creates compellingness and motivation to go for it, but I've never ever in my own experience found that a goal manifests at precisely the time I wrote in my diary 10 years ago on that date. It just, maybe it's my limiting belief. But let's put it like this. Have you achieved every goal you've ever set your mind to? There's absolutely nothing wrong with giving your unconscious mind clear-cut, clean messages about what you want to achieve. In fact, that's a good idea. That is how one ought to communicate to that inner reservoir of resources so that it can do what it does with the law of attraction to manifest into your life that which is important to you. But here's more of what I would like you to think about it. If your mind is so fixated on something, what's everything else that you're missing out on?
Yeah. Once I've set up this goal, I let it go. My mind is not fixated on it. In fact, most of the time when it happens, then it reminds me that I set this goal. I'm not fixating myself on that.
Good. And if the goal then manifests or not, does it even matter to you?
I find that it doesn't, because in setting up this goal, I've taken positive actions to change something or to change some things towards something. So even if the goal in itself does not happen, I find that a lot of other change has happened which makes the goal insignificant by that point. Bigger things have happened and it's been overtaken by events.
Okay. Good. I like your approach. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that goal setting is not important, because it absolutely is. But I'm going to take a different approach beyond SMART goals. Beyond the way people teach SMART goals as the ultimate formula, because if you just follow this formula, the world is yours. And some people go about teaching goals in that way. And I just want to set up a few cautions around that way of thinking and present to you some other ways of thinking that I think you may find useful. When you've achieved those goals that you've achieved, and now, wow, it does manifest, what happens next? What do you do then?
I find that by the time I have achieved these goals, I already have new goals in the works.
You have new goals in the works. So there's always a goal.
There's always something new I'm working myself towards.
There's always something you are working yourself towards. What do you hope to achieve at the end of all of it?
I'm always seeking new knowledge and seeking to improve myself, and that changes from time to time depending on where I am. So what that is keeps changing.
Okay. And let's say all the new knowledge, when you've gained it, you've got all the knowledge that there is to gain, and you've accomplished all of those goals about attaining new knowledge and goals, then how will you be as a person? The SMART goal, traditionally, and especially in the business world, and then people go, well, if it applies to business, then it applies to me, and they take a business model and they apply it to themselves in their personal life, and that's when things go a little bit strange, because they start living like horses on a racetrack. There's my goal. I've got a 20-year plan. That's the goal out there. That's what I want in 20 years' time. They've stood here and they've gone, with my current level of awareness, with what I know now about myself, life, and the universe, I'm going to decide what's important to me in 20 years' time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to benchmark, because benchmarking is a hot word in coaching, and I'm going to project myself out to that 20-year point, and I'm going to decide from that point all the way back to now, what are all the stepping stones that I know I have to discover along the way that will lead me towards that one goal. And I decide what's going to be the thing I'm going to manifest at 19 years from now, 18 years from now, and I create a course for my life. I call it the race course. And all the way back to this point, and now I'm ready. Blinkers on, because there's my goal in mind, and off I go. Through life, galloping down toward... Will that work for later? Cool. Yeah, of course. Because it's meaningful. All right. So there I go, racehorse down the track, end goal in mind, and I'm meeting all these benchmarking points along the way because they're the signs I've set up for myself. And whether I achieve my goal or not 20 years from now, this is what happens along the way. Well, nothing. Actually, nothing happens along the way because all I'm fixated on is that. And actually, along the way, I've got divorced. I've lost friends. I've got high blood pressure. I've got cholesterol. I've got health-related problems of this, that, and the other kind. But, whoa, am I moving fast towards my goal? And that red, shiny Ferrari is there waiting. And is it really worth the price? Okay. So whether it's a material goal at the end or the creation of a business or whatever it might be, it's just a metaphor here that I'm using, folks. But do you get the picture? Okay. So be careful of what you're fixating your attention on and the way in which you're fixating your attention on that. Now, I'm not saying goals are bad, but I'm saying there is another approach. Yes?
Tony Robbins puts up a statistic. Maybe you're familiar with that. We had a class of whatever. Some of them set goals, and then 10 years later, only those with goals had achieved something, and the others were kind of dropouts.
Yeah. Now I want to know what the definition of the achievers and the dropouts is. It's true. It's a Harvard study. And they did that with graduating students in, it was like the 70s. 20 years later, to my knowledge, they found out that it was 90% of the capital earned between all those graduating students was earned by the 10% that had set their goals.
Correct.
So most money was being earned. That's how they're measuring success. It's the amount of money that's being earned. But could there be other ways of attaining financial success and not losing your health and your happiness along the way? Okay, that's really where we're going with this stuff. Beyond SMART goals is beyond goals. The whole beyond goals methodology is what I'm alluding to right now. And the idea is that you want to know, when I've achieved my goal, how will I be as a person? How will I experience myself? What is the emotional state or energy that will be my experience when I have achieved my SMART goal? Now here's the thing. I can connect with that emotional state or energy right here and now and decide if it's worth committing 20 years of my life to or not. Because a lot of people set their goals, they go forth, they achieve those goals and they're disappointed. Now they've lost a year, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years in order to achieve that one goal. They get it and it's not what they thought it was because they were thinking about it back then when they knew what they knew back then, but they don't know what's in the future. And so much of life unfolds and happens along the way. And therefore, one of the first benefits of using the Beyond Goals approach is you can connect with how you will be as a person, feeling that state associated with the accomplishment of your goal here and now, and then decide, is that really worth going for? The other important thing that you get to do is decide, when I've achieved my SMART goal, how will I experience myself as a person? Associate into that fully. And we're learning how to change our physiology. I'll be a happy, successful, thriving business person with a happy family, and we'll have material wealth, we'll have spiritual wealth, and everything will be glorious and great. Good, now imagine being there. Imagine being in that context, experiencing that life. How does it feel in your body right now? Now, while you're in that imagined but fully, powerfully associated state, what is the next smallest step that you take towards the manifestation of that in your life? And you allow your mind to become enlightened by the state-driven idea, rather than the cognitive, analyzed, thought about, benchmarked approach. And now what you know already is that states access the vast reservoir of resources in your unconscious mind. And states are associated to certain achievements and outcomes in your life. And if I can get into the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual state associated with the achievement of my SMART goal, and then allow my mind to be enlightened by that state, then according to this model and according to me through my own experience, that next smallest step is the most important action you can ever take in your life. And you're never ever stepping more than one step at a time outside of the now into the future, and as you take that step, you're back into the now. So it's a way of living in the present moment. You're completely goal-driven, but your goal is never more than one step away. But you do know, because you have elicited a SMART goal, you do know what that is. But why I like Scholastica's approach is because you completely let go of it. Actually, the manifestation of that particular goal now means nothing to you anymore. It was just a way of eliciting the state. But of course it has value, because when you've got into this compelling, powerful energy of eliciting a SMART goal, somebody's listening. Somebody is listening, and if you're congruent with it, it is an energy that goes forth. And who knows where that can land and what it will bring into your life. But more importantly than that is it's the energy that it cultivates in your mind body in the present moment, and it's that energy that determines what you do about it towards its manifestation in your life, even if anything is necessary at all. Here's a way in which I've applied this in a losing weight session. A woman came, wanted to lose a lot of weight, could only afford one session that was already only charging a half price. And she said, "Can you help me to lose weight?" I said, "In one session? I don't know, but maybe we can help you in terms of your motivation to take the right action." So I said to her, "How will you be as a person when you've achieved," and we had elicited it, "your goal weight? How will you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?" And she imagined, I used to have a consulting room in Hout Bay, and she's from this area, and she imagined that she was skipping along Hout Bay Beach in a beautiful long white dress, and she had her guard, she was very spiritually inclined, she had her guardian angels hand in hand, and they were skipping along the beach, far away, paradise, together. And she had this picture in her mind of her being light and free on various levels, and it was just a glorious feeling, and I got it vividly associated into that present tense, and I said, "Now what's the next step you take towards the manifestation of that?" And she verbalized an action step that she was 110% congruent about, that she hadn't thought of ever before, because she'd never thought about it in that state before. She had always been motivated by not being fat. And that's the approach I use in almost every coaching session, at some point along the coaching process. Mostly towards the end, when we're eliciting action steps. The elicitation of action steps, a task, is very much what coaching is about. This is how I provide the tasks that I send my clients home to do. They decide for themselves, out of associating into their, what we call, end state energy. What is the energy associated with their end goal? Now here's another way of looking at goals. Goals are just signs that let you know you're on the right track. The nice house, the nice car, the circle of friends, the family. If these were ever your goals and you've achieved any of them, they're signs that you're on track. But they ought never to be the end goal. The end goal is the person you're becoming, and you're always in a process of becoming. It's not the person you ever become. You're the person who is becoming more and more of actually what's important to you in your life. And what that means is when you're feeling the way you want to feel, i.e. your end state energy, those are the signs that you're on the right track. Now, many people set their goals just for those things. And if my goal was to drive to Pretoria, and there I've set a SMART goal, Pretoria specific, yeah, I know exactly where it is. Is it achievable? Yeah, I think my car can do it timed. I'm going to give myself 16 hours. I'm going to head there. Is it towards where I want to go? Hell yeah, it's Pretoria. And off I go in my car. And I'm tearing up the N1. And off I go. And I'm just approaching the outskirts of Pretoria. And I see a sign, Pretoria, welcome. And I go, wow, I've done it. Straight into the sign. Bang, bang. Now that's what a lot of people are doing in their lives. They're setting goals and they go there and it's just, poof, now I've got it. And then comes maybe a short afterglow and celebration. I did it, I got to Pretoria, take a photo of the sign on the ground. You've got to ask yourself, for what purpose? For what purpose is that goal important to me? That points towards the end state energy. What do I actually want it for? It's a chunk up on your goal. Chunk up and get the value, the energy behind it. For what purpose? How will you be as a person when you've got that, when you've achieved it? This ought to be what motivates you to go for it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, all right, I hear you, but I've got a business to run, and my competitors, they're setting long-term goals, and they are benchmarking their success, and it's all nice and measurable. And are you suggesting that I run my business on this philosophy, and I decide for my business what the end state ought to be? And I'm going, well, you know what, actually we're dealing with people here. And this is a model for people and states and energy. Your business is another kind of entity, but let's not forget it's made up of people as well. And for you to compete in the marketplace, it's probably going to be a good idea for you to take this good old, still worthy, goal-setting model, know where you're going, know what to expect along the way. And that's entirely fine. So I don't negate the value of setting a goal, having a purpose, benchmarking the steps. And the way people usually do that is they imagine where they're going, and they imagine the step before that, and the step before that, and the step before that, all the way back to now, so they know which is the first step to take. Nice, linear, thought-out pattern, still appropriate in the business world. Absolutely. But now, as the person doing business in that business, remember that the more flexible you are as you approach those things, the more you're going to enjoy the journey. And that's what life's about in the various contexts of your life, I believe, including your business. And therefore, to the extent that you can apply this model to your business, and there are people that do this with great success, it's our business model. And you'll find that even those end goals and those steps have to change, especially if you look at the world around you today. I mean, who would have expected, I suppose some people have expected the economic climate of the world today, but I mean, look at those who didn't expect it. And they've really had the carpet pulled from under their feet. And they probably are a lot of people who set their goals in the old traditional way, but things didn't go that, and their model was not flexible enough to change direction and to maintain what they need to maintain in order to go with the way things are going. And this is a model that is completely flexible, and you're continuously living each step of the way. And you know that you're on the right track Because each step that you take is bursting with the end state energy. And you know you've gone off track when you're not feeling that anymore. And so how do you get back on track? You get yourself back into the end state energy through reconnecting with what's the purpose of all of this for me? How will I be as a person when I manifest that? How will it feel in my body right now? What kind of physiology is that? Fantastic. Now I'm fully associated. I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting what it's like to be in that goal right now. Cool. What's the next smallest step that I need to take? And the wisdom of my body is activated because I'm in the resource state. And then I take action. So it's a bit of Eckhart Tolle meets NLP. Being in the present moment, and through present moment awareness and knowing what you want, action step, one at a time, one baby tiny step. And this is also, to me, the most important and powerful and effective way to overcome procrastination. A procrastinator is already making pictures of overwhelming scenarios in the future that are too daunting to consider taking action on, and that's why they never do. And now we get them to visualize how will you be as a person when you have achieved that overwhelming task. You know, let's just say the resources you require to achieve that become available to you by miracle, and you accomplish that task. How will it feel in your body right now? How will you be as a person? What will be your physiology? And you associate them vividly into that end state energy. Now, what's just the next baby, tiny, whiny little step that you get to take that moves you towards the accomplishment of that? And they start to come up with ideas that they'd never even thought of before. So when my client's in the end state energy and I ask them, what's the next tiny, I really squeeze my words, what's the next tiny little step that you take that leads you towards that, so that it's completely achievable, just that step. Even if you don't know where it's going to lead you, it doesn't matter, because the achievement of that step brings up the end state energy, and that's what motivates the next one. And so, yeah, it's something mundane, like cleaning your desk, but you know what? You're going to feel that end state energy while you're cleaning your desk. You're never going to clean your desk with so much enthusiasm. And when it's done, you're going to go, wow, this is great, next step, boom. Wow, this is great, next step, boom. Wow, this is great, next step, boom. And that's how it works. And it works like that every time. And it's a really, really rewarding way of moving towards your really meaningful goals in life. And that's a tour de force of the whole Beyond Goals philosophy. Goals, for what purpose? So that end state energy is a HNLP approach that has utility in every kind of situation. Because it's a way of getting clients to access their enduring states, the real, deeper, underlying state that they aim to achieve through their more material or superficial goals that they think will get them to achieve that. And even if the red Ferrari gets me this feeling for a moment, it doesn't last very long. And it'll be gone again. And all I'll do is I'll set another goal, and it's race after race after race. And life is not about a race. Life is about the journey each and every step along the way. And this brings meaning and value and compellingness and excitement, and really uptime energy into each step. Are you with me?
What I find is, like, when you're consciously thinking about it, you can put yourself in that state, but you tend to forget about it like the next day. Like, you forget you need to be the successful designer. Yeah.
Now, as your coach, I wouldn't be satisfied with just successful designer. Successful designer is one of those signs along the way. You're much more than that. You see, I'm holding this in my awareness all the time. You're more than a successful designer. And what is it that's more than that, which might be the end state energy that's even more compelling than successful designer? that you can use on your way to becoming a successful designer. A successful designer for what purpose? What's important to you about becoming a successful designer? Chunking up questions, you see? I'm chunking up on that to the value that's behind that. And if you were to answer that question right now, Rosanna, what might be important to you about becoming a successful designer?
Creative ability.
Yeah. And when you're bringing out your creative ability, could that lead to something even more? Sorry?
You feel more connected to yourself.
More connected to yourself. And if you're feeling more connected to yourself, where might that lead to you in your life? Chunking up?
Connected to everybody else.
Awesome. And when you're even more connected to everybody else, what's important to you about that?
It's important to connect with everybody else in this world.
It is.
We're all one.
How will you feel when you're connected to everyone else in this whole world and you're experiencing that oneness? What will that be like for you?
Feeling of enlightenment.
Feeling of enlightenment. And I'm just wondering how you will experience that feeling of enlightenment. What would it be like if you were to achieve that? Beyond just a nice, pretty idea. What would it be to you, that feeling of complete connectedness with yourself, with everyone else, in the whole world, that feeling of oneness? What might it be like to you right now?
I can feel it.
You can. Where do you feel it?
Maybe,
Yeah, how do you feel that? Yeah? I like the way your unconscious mind tells me how you're feeling that. And as you're connecting with that feeling right now and feeling it in your body, I wonder if you can really just turn that up and really get in touch with that feeling of oneness. Really get in touch with that enlightenment that exists inside you, because that's what you are. And as you're connecting with that right now, what's the next smallest step that you know you can take that moves you towards becoming a successful designer? If you were to want to become a sexful, I like that. You're a sexful designer. What does a sexful designer create? Stuff of a sexful designer. That's the stuff you find in that hanky-panky shop, now.
Yeah. Extra energy.
Now, what's your next smallest step? Anyway. That's where I'm going with this. And that's just an example of how you chunk up. It's not really where I'm going, Eugene.
I think you've got a very good calibration skill.
All right. Get it?
When I was listening to John talking about this, my analytical mind really enjoyed this one part where he said, if you probably can do it a lot better than I, remembering it, where when you do your goal from here in 20 years' time, you do that goal setting with a certain amount of resourcefulness. But when you do it beyond the goal and you take that little next step, you're already more resourceful than you were when you started out. So as you do it step by step with the end state in mind, you become more and more resourceful. So it's like this checkerboard effect, you put one piece down, in English what it means. So dominoes. Yeah, you become just so much more powerful to achieve that. It gains momentum.
Snowballs.
And that really, really grabbed me when I listened to that.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah. You're building success momentum.
Yeah.
Each step along the way. So that eventually it's like a snowball rolling down the hill and nothing's going to stop you. And it's a really fun way of moving towards what's important to you in your life.
In the example you did, you chunked up really high,
Yep.
quickly. And I mean, obviously everything can be chunked up as high. So
Yeah.
at what point do you say, well, this is enough of the end state energy, or you just calibrate into that when the person feels completely there and present in that energy, because it could go all the way up to more and more abstract. And
Well, very relevant question. And I go as high as I can calibrate that the client is comfortable going. Now, we're always working in a context. So within a certain context, there'd probably be as high as they go. But if you're persistent, they will chunk up to beyond that context to the life. And if their model of the world goes there and you're persistent, they'll go beyond that. And here's ultimately what I'm chunking them up into: beyond words. Beyond words. There are no more words to explain the experience, because they've already gone up to the highest levels of abstraction: enlightenment, joy, happiness, complete inner peace, absolute whatever. These are the abstract nominalizations from where you can't chunk any higher, which you can be completely satisfied with, because the client still got some mental picture and so on to do with that. And it's really as far as you need to go. And get them in touch with that. And you can add to that past experiences in their life when they have felt that way, and so on. And if you really want to push the envelope a little bit further, and I love playing with this, when I've got the right client, right type situation, all the way into beyond words, and now they're like, they'll literally have an epiphany or a satori right there in front of me, which is a moment of enlightenment, and I'm going, from that space, now what's important to you, and what's the next smallest step? Here's generally the rule as to how high you chunk them. You're chunking up, chunking up, chunking up, and you start to get to the values. Remember, you're not happy with satisfaction or any away from stuff like, well, I won't have this anymore. I won't have the problem anymore. Or I'll be relieved. Those are weak, yes, weak energy states. Chunk them up on that. And when you start hearing repeat words, well, I feel happy. And you go, and beyond that, because you want to see if they're going to go beyond that. And when you're happy, what's important to you about feeling happy? Or what will happiness lead to in your life? And they go, well, joy. And I'm going, excellent. And what will that lead to in your life? And they go, well, I'll be happy. You're not going, now you're looping right at the top of the range. That's great. Now just get them to embody that. So feeling happy now as you are, and you really need to calibrate to that. Or you can say, now that you're totally happy and you want to really get them associated in another way, if you find that they're not, you say, just remember a time in your life when you felt completely happy like this. When were you that happy? As happy as this? Anytime between now and when you were your earliest memory. Connect with that right now. Tell me, where are you? Well, I'm this little child and I'm running on the beach at school holidays. I've got an ice cream lolly in my hand and it's a beautiful day. And you want them to be vividly associated into that. And they'll tell you about everything. You want to ask them about what they see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. And they'll tell you, okay, I see, feel, hear, smell, and taste that. And then you run it by them again in present tense. In other words, tell me about a time when you were completely happy in that way. They have to remember it. Okay, now they've remembered it. I asked them to recall something in the past. They've gone to collect the memory. They've given me visual recall. And now they're in the memory. And I want to bring that memory into present tense, so as change my language. So I say, now as you're there, running along the beach with the ice cream lolly. I've just done regression. And you're running along the beach with the ice cream lolly in your hand, and you're seeing the blue sky, and you're feeling the warmth of the sun, and the salty, and activating all their senses using their words as much as possible, because that's the neural net I'm lighting up. And you're having that full experience right now in your body, feeling this as you are. What's the next smallest step? That leads you towards becoming the successful designer. Or the sexful designer. The choosing of the next smallest step needs to not come from a conscious thinking process. It must come from a state-driven moment. And if that state is a state of absolute wholeness and expandedness that cannot even put into words because it's so tremendous, then the next smallest step is going to be one that is most appropriate for that person. Because it's their state, it's their direct experience of something that is probably, if we can interpret it, ultimately where they're going to in life. And that's why they think that one goal is important, you see. So the step will be the most valid and important next smallest step for them.